gospel reading today comes from the book of John, chapter 18, verses 36 and 37, which you can find on page 943 in your Bibles. Jesus answered, "My kingship is not of this world. If my kingship were of this world, my servants would fight, that I might not be handed over to the Jews, but my kingship is not from the world." Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Our second scripture reading comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 3, verse 1 and verses 8 through 30, which is on page 763. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no heed to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image which I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning, fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve you, your gods, or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he ordered certain mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning, fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their mantles, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were cast into the fiery furnace. Because the king's order was strict, and the furnace very hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning, fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose up in haste. He said to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered the king, "True, O king." He answered, "But I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning, fiery furnace and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, Come forth and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their mantles were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set at naught the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb and their houses laid to ruins. For there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. This is the word of the Lord.
So the book of Daniel is apocalyptic literature. Apocalyptic literature is about the end of the world as we know it, not necessarily about the end of the world. The heroes in this apocalyptic tale, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which the kids are watching a VeggieTales version, and they are called Rack, Shack, and Benny, which is way easier. So from here on out, Rack, Shack, and Benny have lost everything. They've been deported, exiled. They're stripped of their king, their temple, their city, their land. And now the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, has asked them to turn their backs on their faith, on their God. And they won't do it. They won't lose that too. They come from this lineage of faith in the one true God. And we've been following their story for the past 3 months, right? Their ancestry, Abraham. Abraham trusted God, even in what we perceive as a ridiculous, barbaric trial, sacrificing his own son. But God provided another way, is what we learned. The world turned out differently than Abraham thought. They carry with them, Rack, Shack, and Benny, carry with them the story of Jacob, who experienced angels descending and ascending on this mystical ladder from heaven to earth. Their faith tells them that God calls people like Moses, unable to speak on his own, but faithful nonetheless. Their family of faith thought the world would end in a desert, in the wilderness, but God provided manna from heaven. All these stories we've heard in the last 3 months. They share an ancestry with the prophet Samuel, with King David, and Solomon, who built their beloved temple. In the face of Nebuchadnezzar, they were going to stick to the story that has been passed down to them, just as the prophets had told them to. They were going to listen for God's instruction, like Elijah listened for the stillness on that mountaintop. We heard that story too. Or as Isaiah, who taught them to look for the light. Or Jeremiah, who taught them to seek the welfare of Babylon, these strangers that hold them captive. That's what we heard just last week. They come from a long line of faithful people who stick to the story of their faith, over and against their own selves sometimes. They stick to what the community is known for, faithfulness to God, the one God, Abraham's God. And their faithfulness, Rack, Shack, and Benny, their faithfulness opens the door to a future that they could not have expected or imagined. That's what apocalyptic literature does. It presents a future where the world turns out differently than we think it will. So they face a fire so hot, did you catch it? It kills the people who throw them into the fire. Their future is certain, it seems, right? They are going to die for sticking to the story of their faith. This is it. it's over. But it doesn't turn out that way. The fire doesn't burn them. Instead, there's this fourth person in the fire with them. And it says that the person looks like one of the gods. But that's not even really the miracle of the story. The miracle of the story is that King Nebuchadnezzar turns his heart toward the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Can he do that? Right? I mean, put yourself in the story, right? I mean, isn't God just the God for the Israelites? I mean, that's how it's been until right now. Can other people or other nations serve the God of Abraham? Because that's not their ancestry. They haven't seen anything like this. Right? So here they are walking out of the fiery furnace, and Nebuchadnezzar meets them to say, I believe, who is this God? Which, that's the question actually he asked when he wanted to throw them in. Who is this God that will save you? And then when he walks out, he asks, who is this God so that I can serve this God? They've never seen anything like this. The problem, really, for the Israelites being in Babylon was that they were separated from God. They were separated from the temple. That was how God interacted with them. Period. End of story. Now, if the Babylonians trust in God, in the God of Abraham, does that mean that God is with them in this foreign place too? Does God live in Babylon now? Wait a minute. We can worship God alongside foreigners and strangers and outsiders? This is really what they're asking, right? Now, maybe Rakshak and Benny aren't, but when they went back to the rest of the community and said, guess what? King Nebuchadnezzar wants to do this, their community hit them with all of their doctrine and polity that said Babylon can't do that, right? That was supposed to be a Presbyterian joke, but... Their faithfulness, this is what happens when you go off script, their faithfulness opened a door, honest to God, right? It opened a door to a future that they could not have expected or imagined. It's in Babylon where the people learn that God cares about other places and other people. It's in Babylon where the people learn that God transcends national identity. It's in Babylon where the literature begins to form a theology of the kingdom of heaven, actually. Not a place, heaven, but a kingdom or a kinship that transcends the people groups of the world. A subculture, if you will, of the world where God is at the center. That's where this starts happening. There was no need for that before this. The aim of God in history is the creation of an all-inclusive community of loving persons where God is at the center. That is the aim of God in history. And the Bible traces that formation, that community formation, from individual, we've seen, to family, to tribe, to people, to nation, and then to all humanity. We're getting the very first glimpses of God's movement outside their clan. The faithfulness of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego make that possible. It is their faithfulness that opened this door to a future that no one could have expected or imagined. Their faith, their faithfulness influenced, it changed the Babylonian culture. I can't help but think that that's the kind of community I want to be part of, right? Our mission statement says that we are knowing Christ, growing as disciples, and living the challenge that that is every day. The challenge of faithfulness every day. What if we faced a fiery furnace? Would we believe that sticking to the story of our ancestors could open up a door to a future that we could not imagine? Can we imagine how God might use our faith and our faithfulness to change our world? Do we have that kind of hope? I hope we do. I hope we do. I hope we have, bless you, a larger hope, not just what happens between me and one person, but when we gather as a community, we influence community. Do we dare walk into, here we are, the first week of Advent, with that kind of hope? Do we dare to take this first step into the first day, into this 4-week journey? Because the journey ends with the moment where God changed the world forever. That's what this season is. It's 4 weeks of preparing our hearts for the coming of the Messiah, who came not as a king or a leader or a monarch or anyone in power. Oh no, God doesn't do stuff the way we imagine, ever. We all wish, but it doesn't happen. God's future doesn't turn out the way we assume the future should or could or would turn out. God's got a whole other scheme going. The Messiah came as a baby, a completely dependent human being. God came into the world just like we come into the world, vulnerable and small and fragile. No one saw that coming. God always surprises. Do we dare to step into Advent looking for God to surprise us? I would be remiss if I didn't say that I believe we've seen bits of a glimpse of a possible future already. And it's surprising us because we're entertaining this idea of merging with another congregation. We didn't see that coming. And so far, we have been surprised by the similarities that we have with them. We've been surprised by the friendships that are easily made with them. We've been surprised by the calling to do something uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. It is not, however, a fiery furnace. But life in journey with God is often not what we think it should or would or could or will or can be. Instead, it's what it is. Life with God is what it is, right now. And when we live that way, when we stick to that kind of story, we find, just like the 3 Hebrew men, God is standing in the furnace with us. God is with us right now, each moment. Interestingly, not saving us from the fiery furnace, but rather choosing to be in it with us. That's what Emmanuel means, right? God with us. That's the story that we have to hold on to. That's the hope that we have. Our hope is that God is with